Hello everyone. My name is Tal Keren Katz, and I'm here with Laronia Ferrar. I am a trauma therapist and a lecturer, currently studying an MA in the East-West Psychology in CIIS, and I'm the founder of the Good Way of Living, an integrative approach to emotional balance and healing. My work combines advanced trauma healing modalities with the wisdom of the Enneagram, the Hakomi, and quantum healing principles. I focus on helping individuals and leaders connect with their inner guidance, release stress, and create transformation from within.
Great. Hi, everyone. So my name is Laronia Farrar. I am a clinical psychologist, and current work includes correctional health, and I work on a forensic inpatient psychiatric unit, in addition to providing individual and family psychotherapy with a specialty in complex and intergenerational trauma. I am currently enrolled in the Anthropology and Social Change program here at CIIS. And as my partner Tao has mentioned, we will be discussing the complexities of intergenerational trauma amongst indigenous people who have experienced colonization, while also reflecting on various approaches to mental health and spiritual well-being. So I am going to let Tao take it away.
Thank you, Laronia. So before we dive into the readings and theories, I want to invite us all to pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. If you want to, you can close your eyes for a few moments. And with the next breath, remember what it feels like to belong to something larger than yourself. Sometimes a single image can say so much, and feel your body and the connection to earth, to your soul, to your guides, to spirits, to your ancestors. And soon we will show you a short scene from the film Avatar by James Cameron. It captures what spiritual and communal healing might look like in a world where humans, nature, and spirit move together in harmony. In this scene, Jack Sully, a Western soldier, meets Natri, um, an indigenous woman who doesn't want to cooperate with him until something amazing happens. Take a look.
Fine. Fine. If you love your little forest friends, why not let them just kill my ass? What's the thinking?
Why save you?
Yeah, why save me?
You have a strong heart. No fear. But stupid. Ignorant like a child.
Well, if I'm like a child, then, look, maybe you should teach me.
Sky people cannot learn you do not see.
Then teach me how to see.
No one can teach you to see.
Whoa. Look, come on, can't we talk? Say, where'd you learn to speak English? Dr. Augustine's school? Wilhelm!
You're like a baby. Vai today.
I need your help.
You should not be here.
Okay, take me with you.
No. Go back.
No.
Okay. Go back. Dana! No! Atokirina! Atokirina.
What are they?
Seeds of the sacred tree. Very pure spirits.
Uh-huh. What was that all about?
Come. Come.
What we just saw is not only a beautiful image, it is a feeling, a way of living where there is a room for community, ritual, memory, and roots. In the sacred tree, we can sense the idea that life and death, humans and nature, past and future, are all together. When we speak about healing, this is what we mean, the ability to remember that we are a part of a larger perspective of life. In many ways, we in the modern Western world also carry a collective wound, a wound of separation, of forgetting. So the question I want to leave us with as we begin this journey together is, how can we start to remember again? How can we bring soul, connection, ritual back into our everyday lives? In the first part, I will share voices from several indigenous cross-cultural healers, each offering a way of reclaim memory, soul, and community into the heart of healing. The first one is Martin Frechtel. He is a Mayan trainer. He's trained as a shaman, artist, and philosopher who spent many years living in a small village in Guatemala. He brings a unique perspective to psychology and healing that challenges almost every assumption of the Western world. In this interview, he speaks about what he calls the indigenous soul. When he says indigenous, he doesn't mean people of a specific tribe, but the inner capacity that lives inside every human being, the part that knows how to be in a relationship with the earth, with our ancestors, with the community, and with the sacred part of life. Brechtel believes that the modern world has largely lost this connection. In trying to control nature, we have forgotten how to listen to it. In trying to avoid pain, death, and grief, we lost our capacity and ability to love. We lost the ability to be strongly connected to our body. These four words, earth, ancestors, community, and spirit, hold the heart of this teaching. This reminds us that healing begins not inside an individual, but within a relationship. Modern culture values speed, progress, consumption, and technology, but has little room for stillness, ritual, and depth. As a result, people feel empty. They live, but they are not fully alive. They feel a lot of stress and not a connection to their body and to their spirit. That is what Prechtel calls the wounded soul. A soul that has forgotten its song, its ritual, its nature. A world that cannot feel its grief, cannot truly love. This is a beautiful sentence that he wrote. And I would love to say a word from my heart. I'd like to devote this part of our lecture to my teacher, Osnat Yadgav, who passed away a few hours ago and was the founder of the Israeli Enneagram Center and devoted her life to teaching Enneagram all over the world. So I dedicate this part to her. Thank you, Asnat, for an amazing journey that you created in the body that you left. One of the most profound ideas in this interview that Prechtel did is that grief itself is a medicine. In the Mayan tradition, grief is not a psychology problem. It is the sacred act of love. I really admire the connection to love. When we grieve, we acknowledge our belonging to life. We strongly feel the connection to love. And when we refuse to grieve, the heart dries out. Much of the violence, addiction, and restlessness in modern society are symptoms of unexpressing pure grief and pure connection between grief and our heart. Grief is not the opposite of joy, he says. It is the doorway back to love, to community, to earth. For Prechtel, rituals are not decoration. They are technologies of the soul. They create bridge between worlds, between life and death, between the visible and the invisible. A culture that loses its rituals, he says, loses its soul. In the Western, people often chase intensity through drugs, violence, endless consumption, because they are unconsciously searching for what ritual once offered, a direct meeting with the sacred. Fractals cause us to create new rituals for our time, not copies of the old ones, but express the same spirit and the connection to our ancestors. To save indigenous soul does not mean going backwards. It means remembering forward, restoring the sacred dimension of life here and now. In mental health, this means remembering that true healing happens when we rediscover our place in the web of life. When we remember that we are not alone, not separate, not from God and not from our spirit, but we are part of a living cosmos. Prechtel reminds us that healing is not about fixing what's broken, but remembering that we were never separate and we are a part of a larger picture. Let's take a breath together. Renee Linklater is is a psychologist and community leader from Canada. Her book, Decolonizing Trauma Work, asks how trauma healing can truly serve Indigenous people when psychology itself was shaped by colonial systems. This work is not personal or political. It asks how can we heal not only people, but the wounds of history itself. To decolonize means not only to remove external control, but to free our mind, to free the language, the healing practices, and the colonial influence. Trauma in indigenous communities is never about the individual. It is collective, historical, and living presence carried through generations, held in silence, passed from parents to children. For example, one of the healing modalities when someone is very sad is to sleep with him. So the ancestors, the old people, will sleep with the person to let him feel secure. Western trauma models often focus on diagnosis and symptoms reduction, removing the context of colonization. Linklater argues that this approach continues the logic of domination by imposing foreign definitions of healing. Even therapy can become another form of control when it is ignoring the wisdom of indigenous ways of knowing. For Linklater, stories are a medicine. Storytelling is not just about remembering pain, but it is reclaiming voice of belonging to a larger community, a larger picture, to belong to the world. When stories are told in circles and ceremonies, they transform isolation into community. Healing becomes collective, not private. Healing becomes a part of a larger community. Healing happens through ceremony, through connection to the land, through reviving indigenous languages, and through healing together. Linklater calls this collective responsibility the understanding that we're each other medicine. She shares stories of people who found healing only when they returned to ceremony and community. Linklater reminds us that healing is not just therapy, it is liberation. It is about restoring identity, voice, and dignity. When we heal together, we feel the worldwide and connection to our wound. This message reaches for beyond Canada. It speaks to all of us who live in society shaped by collective trauma, inviting us to remember that liberation and healing are one and the same thing. Laronia will elaborate on trauma and spirituality.
Thank you so much, Tal. That was lovely. And thank you for just sharing, the loss of your teacher with us. It sounds like she was a wonderful person. So I hope her spirit is with her ancestors and, she's living on wonderfully.
Thank you so much. I
Of
appreciate
course.
you.
So I'm going to jump in. We're going to talk about spirituality and mental health to start off. There's been many studies that suggest that religious and spiritual practice have a significant influence on an individual's health, their life satisfaction, and their overall well-being. While spiritual is a subjective healing practice, it has been known to have benefits for individuals under stressful conditions. There has been extensive research on spirituality and mental health, suggesting that spirituality is not only acts as a protective factor, but a positive influence, even though there are contradicting beliefs about the effectiveness of spiritual practices. There are marginalized groups such as African Americans and Latinos that typically seek spiritual support in their healing and healthcare. The challenge here is that sometimes a lot of the approaches are Christian-based and focused on limited trauma, but to know that these individuals are seeking the support they need through spirituality and wanting to incorporate that into their healing regime implies that it is effective in some ways, right? And it's just a matter of who utilizes it and how they utilize it. So it's important to keep that in mind. Spirituality becomes beneficial when individuals have positive relationships with their beliefs and practices, which allows individuals to envision change and positivity after endurance of trauma. This is due to the increase in faith after adversity because it provides a broader sense and importance of life, leaning more into the higher power for resolution of problems, pain, and loss. So, all right, we can go to the next slide. So, what is intergenerational trauma? So before I answer that, I want to take a look at the slide here and just kind of reflect on how this passes down, right? And you have the great grandmother here, the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter, and the child. And it provides an overview of the things they experience and how, starting from one generation, it then leads to other internal conflicts and even external in some ways, um, to the next generation and next generation. So, what is intergenerational trauma? It is the transmission of trauma through subsequent generations, that's formed through psychological consequences stemming from various things such as poverty, injury, as well as cultural and relationship hardship. It is considered epigenetic and in ways can become a genetic adaptation. The trauma response varies by generation. However, collective psychological struggles include shame, guilt, maybe increased anxiety, sometimes intrusive thoughts, dissociation, and hypervigilance. This can also lead to difficulty with relationships and dysregulation of emotions in response to stress. So, reference back to this slide here, we see that the great grandmother may have experienced relocation, assimilation, cultural disconnect, right? There are maybe physical abuse has been something that was experienced. And then with all of that that was experienced internally, that affected that person internally, now moving to the next generation, there's loss of parenting. At this point, neglect and abuse comes into play because the great grandmother experienced things that was harmful and struggled to provide that connection to the next generation, right? And then moving forward to, like I said, the mother, there's a loss of spirituality, a loss of traditions, poor nutrition, and so forth, where you have codependency and anger and resentment in the daughter. And those things continue to pass down the line of the generations because the lack of healing that has occurred, right? So, um, as we focus on this presentation here, we want to emphasize that it is important to reflect on what this means, and what intergenerational trauma is and how we can progress forward. So, all right, next slide, please. Okay. Colonialism and intergenerational trauma. Okay, so colonialism began around the 16th century, and this was during the Age of Discovery, which was the European colonization of the Americas. So in this act, it was subjugation of the native population, and it involved the invasion and exploitation of indigenous cultures and populations. So I'm sure many individuals can know about Christopher Columbus and Native Americans, indigenous people, and what happened during that situation. But this is what this is referencing to. So intergenerational trauma manifests itself in various races and cultures, specifically amongst the indigenous. Trauma dates back thousands of years. There's been trauma in, like I said, in various cultures that has gone back centuries that many of them are still working to come out of, right? And it speaks to, while there's been progression in life and with these cultures, there's still a challenge there. There's still a struggle for autonomy and for the healing within these individuals. Um, Colonization and cultural suppression have led to poverty, isolation, and borders that keep the indigenous separated. They have fought for years to seek autonomy and equality without having to neglect their cultural values and beliefs. They've done so by engaging in spiritual rituals and ceremonies such as the sun dance. All right, next slide. Okay. So the so going back to the conversation surrounding colonialism and Native Americans, like I said, they lean into this spiritual practice called the Sundance, which involves music, dancing, and storytelling. And kind of referencing back to Tao's original, her slide when she talked about storytelling and how that can be a healing practice in itself. And so they utilize that music, dancing, and storytelling along with the use of sacred cultural objects. This contributes to healing, staying connected to the community and ancestral spirit. Sacrifice and communal prayer are a way to connect with the spiritual world, to seek blessings and protection for their community. Colonialism actually banned the Sundance in 1904 because there was this issue about, they wanted assimilation, migration, all these things. They wanted this one nation, right? And this idea of the indigenous people having their own identity was not a thought, like we can say that, right? And so they banned it. But in 1978, it was lifted, and the ceremony continues to be practiced today. Their language, the songs, the ceremonies come from the land, is how they keep their spirituality alive. Indigenous people face centuries of genocide, assimilation, and discrimination, which has resulted in years of intergenerational trauma. So we now have Indigenous People Day, as originally was Columbus Day, but we now honor and pay homage to the Indigenous people for this, because which is long overdue, and I think that it's amazing that we do honor that now. So it was based on the discrimination of the indigenous population in America. It is now the second Monday in October. And this fight brought insight into refutation of the doctrine of discovery, which, as we know, Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas, leading to a declaration that Spain owned all Western Hemisphere and the people who no longer have rights to their lands. This resulted in so much hardship. It was, people were losing their lives, people were being harmed, there was scarcity, all of these things that was problematic. And it led to the institution of colonialism. So what I would like to do is share a video with you of a healing practice practiced by the indigenous people that, like I said, is still present today, and it's very beautiful. So I just hope that you all are able to gain something from this and understand the beauty of maintaining your cultural values and spiritual alignment that allows you to just grow and elevate as individually, but collectively. So we're going to play this next slide. Let you watch this video.
The Sundance is a sacred and religious ceremony that has been practiced by the indigenous people of the Great Plains for many generations. The ceremony is celebrated each summer to honor the sun and ensure that it continues to generate resources for the community. The ceremony is typically seen as a time of renewal and sacrifice, but no two Sundances are the same, and the details vary between indigenous cultures. The ceremony typically lasts between 4 and 8 days and involves all members of the community. In some communities, individuals will fast in the days leading up to the ceremony as a further form of sacrifice to the sun. In preparation for the ceremony, the men in the community construct a lodge where the main portion of the celebration occurs. The celebration itself consists of dancing to music for long periods of time, including traditional drum and flute songs played by other members of the community. The ceremony often involves the use of sacred objects such as buffalo skulls, eagle feathers, and ceremonial pipes. In some ceremonies, the men will perform the blood ritual, where they pierce their chest skin, connect the piercing to the center pole of the lodge, and dance until it tears. This is seen as an ultimate sacrifice to the sun and is very honorable. In 1904, the United States banned the Sundance ceremony due to its perceived violent nature, and it was not until 1978 that practicing the ceremony was protected under the law. Despite the efforts to eradicate the ceremony, it continues to be an important part of life for many indigenous tribes, including the Lakota, Crow, Arapaho, and Shoshone people.
Lovely. Thank you. So as you can see, they have, indigenous people have this, they have their cultural and spiritual um, things that they do to make sure that they stay in alignment with their culture. They talk about this sacred tree and how you have the roots that, you're releasing a lot of the things that they experience. The idea of sacrifice and just really honing into this idea of healing and just saying, hey, we've been through a lot. We've experienced this pain, all of this loss. And now you have these branches coming out of the sacred tree saying, hey, now we want to reach further and just reach out to our ancestors, those who are going to provide healing for our future selves, for our future children and future generations, so that we ensure that our cultural values stay where they are, right? And just continue to just elevate as a culture and as people. So I think that's very beautiful that it was, protected in 1970, and now that it is continuing to be practiced today. So now we're going to talk about some healing and connection. Um, so healing and connection looks different for every individual. It depends on what you need. It can be based on various components. It can be cultural reasons. It could be racial reasons. It can be spiritual reasons. Things that you may need in order for you to properly heal. And so some of those ways could be finding the support you need from other people. Um, some people lean into therapy, right? And that can be something that can be very beneficial, helping yourself recognize and challenge your core beliefs that you may have, because it now allows you to recognize and see who you are and how you can progress and elevate individually, but also just bring it to those around you that allows now not only just individual progression, but collective progression, right? Um, and then in some ways that can be identifying, but also identifying and accepting the trauma, right? And not in the sense of, oh, this traumatic thing happened to me, I'm just mad, but in a sense of understanding that this has occurred to me, but how can I now grow from this, right? How can I learn from this and be okay with finding love and joy and peace with moving forward in life, because you still have life, right? And just finding that inner spirituality of saying, I'm still here. I can continue to live. I can continue to heal, right? Um, and just finding peace and joy within that. Not the easiest thing to do, but it's something to just try to work toward. It's just finding and identifying and accepting the trauma in a sense of bettering yourself. Um, Learn from family history, right? We talked about the indigenous people and how there's long history of colonization and poverty and pain and loss and all of the injury, but yet they continue to go through they have these family history that allows them to stay as one, be collective. And I think that's an amazing and empowering thing to do. So learn from that and utilize it for good. I think something that Tal brought up was grief, right? Grief it's yes, it can be painful in that moment, and you go through grief, right? Everyone has their variation of what grief looks like, but then when you find that connection to the individual who you're grieving, you can also find you connect to the love that you have with that person, right? And you can properly mourn that individual or individuals when you actually connect to the grief and understand what it is that you're experiencing and how you're feeling. Um, and just continue to examine your own patterns of healthiness or unhealthiness that allows you to make changes in life. If you repeat the same things, you stay in that same stagnation, right? You stay stagnant. But then when you recognize unhealthy patterns, you can now move forward in life. So just look inward. Sometimes finding that self-awareness is very beneficial and it can take you very far. So just continue to work on yourself, work on just your level, your self-love, your self-development, self-healing, all of these things that is going to be very positive and helpful for you and the future generations, right? So yeah, so continue to do that. And just however you may find that, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through therapy, whether it's through some type of physical healing, because sometimes physical things can be a healing practice as well. So, but you have to look inward and figure out what is the best healing practice for you, or just even for your culture or your family, that allows you to progress forward. So, all right. Well, okay. All right. So, we talked about the indigenous people and just the colonialization and how this has impacted them tremendously. And so I want to end this with a reflection, right? There have been many studies that have emphasized genocide and things that have occurred during colonialism, and not enough information about forced migration and forced assimilation, food scarcity, and the loss of homes and land. These are all adversities that have affected marginalized and indigenous groups' health and well-being. Intergenerational traumas have contributed to both social and cultural deficits in individuals' lives. However, collective resilience has allowed indigenous groups to persevere by staying culturally grounded through healing methods such as spiritual practices, as well as collective trauma. To conclude this presentation about healing and spiritual practices, I would like to bring Tao back to the floor and just, allow her to just bring us back into a meditative space and just remind us the importance of staying grounded and what it means to have self-care and spiritual rejuvenation. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Laronia. It was beautiful, how you explained everything. Wow. And
Thank you.
yeah. So I would like us all to close our eyes for one moment. And when we take a deep breath, we can feel the self-love, the connection to ourselves, to remember who we are, who we were, to remember the connection to our soul, to our spirits, to our guides, to our community, the world, to this great earth, and to find the inner voice that says everything is okay, and we can feel everything, and we can stay present, and we can feel the gratitude of all the good that we have in life. So, when you take your time to open your eyes, I want to thank you guys for being with us. I want to thank you, Laronia, for a beautiful relationship that we've created, and it was lovely working with you. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. And considering the time difference, we made it work. So it was great partnering with you, and I'm glad the presentation came out lovely. So I thank you as well.
Thank
Yes.
you so much, and have an amazing day, guys. Bye bye.
Thank you.